Like it's spiritual and practical at the same time. It's not just reading and studying Islam to get spiritually uplifted, but it's also, I see, it's a serious effort to educate and to be a practical service. Once they do different ways that they so that. I saw the factory where you have. My name is Fajri Ansari. I was born in North Carolina and raised in New York City, and have spent most of my life now in Buffalo, New York. Presently, I've been serving as an imam in a small masjid here in Buffalo, Masjid Nu'man. I came to Islam by way of the Nation of Islam, and then grew into the World Community of Islam and just Muslim American Association, following Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his son, Imam W.D. Muhammad, who is my imam. And I also am a men's basketball coach at Buffalo State College now, my 9th year. I've been working at the university for about 33 years. I used to coach high school basketball. I first became familiar about a year ago. I mean, I might have been influenced or seen others, but didn't know about it. But I was asked to participate on a delegation, a trip to Istanbul about a year ago. And wasn't really familiar with the group who was hosting us, but we were traveling, and I kind of realized that, again, didn't have any particular name or they was telling us, but I realized that it was an effort or movement that appeared to be involved with, I think the name was service, you know, providing service and focusing on education. Well, when we was there, we had some literature. We attended the major conference on Ijtihad that was going on. I actually got some book on love and dialogue, and so my impression of just, again, I'm still learning, but from what I read, you know, just try to put a couple of words that come to mind is very spiritual, sincere. But I also get a sense of practicality, like it's spiritual and practical at the same time. It's not just reading and studying Islam to get spiritually uplifted, but it's also, I see, it's a serious effort to educate and to be a practical service. What I observe, I think, is the practicality that we have the obligation as Muslim. Like Muhammad the Prophet, peace be upon him, was selected to be a mercy to all humanity and all of the world. So if we follow him, then we also have to be a mercy. So I think what I could observe, the most significant contribution is pulling the resources through education and business and utilizing that marriage to be of service to humanity. So you helping feed, like, yeah, I know I saw factories where every year in Ramadan at Iftar, there was packages that are being sent, and I know you have a record to taking care of the needy in many countries, not just your own people. So I think that's, to me, is what's significant. Mm-hmm. The fact that, you know, you've been existing for some time and have been very influential and have grown to where you have influence over many, many parts of the world without looking for attention, I think that's significant. You know, we learned that the Prophet teaches us the best charity is that which you give that only you and Allah knows about. And so, and it appeared to be diverse, not necessarily political. And I will also say that it doesn't appear to be spending time attacking someone else's beliefs and their principle or their culture. It holds on to, it's not compromising, but not spending time and saying we're the best and you're not, and if you don't follow this way, then you are kafir, unbeliever, disbeliever, and you're going to the hellfire. Not that all organizations do that, but the Muslim organizations that get the most attention, and we understand why. That's has a lot to do with propaganda. But those organizations that get the attention get that attention because they take an extremist position, which other religions do the same thing. Like it's my way, the only way, and if you don't accept this way, you're going to hell. So I think that to me is I recognize as to be a difference. Allah tells us in the Quran that we are one ummah, we are one community, and that we were created from one soul, and that He brought us here so that we can become familiar with one another. And so that says we have to respect who Allah created us, and we can't be someone else other than what Allah created. So we should embrace who we are and where we are, where we live. That's our culture. That's who Allah made us to be. And at the same time, respecting others. Get to understand someone, you have to have some form of dialogue. And then that dialogue will hopefully bring you into engagement. And through engagement, that will hopefully bring you into activities. And when you actually work with someone, and which is an act of worship, really, and you work with someone and you pray with someone and work, then you become more familiar with what they are. And I think if we take the approach of only focusing on our differences, then we won't get much accomplished. Because we have our beliefs, someone else had their beliefs, and this has been going on for centuries. And to just keep bringing up the differences, you don't get any further. And so ultimately, I think about this movement or any movement, we all, if we say we're Muslim, we all have to recognize that Allah is the judge of all of us. And ultimately, He would judge our activities. If I spend so much time trying to judge you, then I'm putting myself in a position that I don't deserve to be in. Allah is the judge of us. And so I'm not familiar with so much what the criticism is, whether it's political or, you know, some Muslims don't like you talking to non-Muslims, you know, and this is the mistake other religions make. You know, some attack Islam the same way. You know, it's just, in the United States, you know, it's so much of a challenge to continue to educate about Islam. And many people here think it's like it's a new religion or something, you know, where there's masjids in Christian countries that's older than this whole country, you know, in Europe and other Muslims. So this building that exists much longer than the United States itself, but yet the perception like this is some new religion, some made up religion. So we have a lot to do that we have to educate. So dialogue is an obligation. If we are made to know and to become familiar with one another, that's what Allah says, then how can we do that without dialogue, without communicating? The school, I'm finding out that there's a lot of schools that exist, Hizmet schools in different countries. I did have the good fortune of visiting one of the schools in Istanbul last year. And it was a huge school, and it was seen to have a diverse students from other parts of the country that was there. And they were learning Quran, they was learning Islamic studies. But I also found that they were being prepared once they leave there to graduate and go into other universities. So I thought this was unique because sometimes we get schools that strictly just Islamic and they have no connection with other university or institutions. So I thought that was I was impressed that they had a beautiful masjid inside of the school, and I met the leader, the imam there, and he recited so beautifully the Quran there, and we met some of the students. But I was informed that once they leave there, and it was different grades, that they were being prepared to go into various professions. So that, I think, is good because it shows a balance. You know, it's not strictly Islam, which is our foundation, spiritual teaching, but it allows you to go into different sciences and professional areas, and keeping that foundation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we follow Muhammad, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is chosen to be a mercy to humanity, to all humanity. So if he's our model, then we have to follow him. Then it's important for us to be a mercy, not just to Muslim countries, but wherever we can help. And I know I was in Istanbul. It was because of the war in Syria. I saw many Syrian refugees being assisted. I know when they have earthquakes and natural catastrophes that Hizmet Movement has been. I saw the factory where you have the rescue equipment and things. So I'm saying, wow, you know, Allah says that go together, go forth as in a race. So Muslims we should want to be out front. So, you know, not just the Red Cross, we should have our own, which we do. And so why not? If Allah's gonna evaluate us on our service and our good deeds, then we certainly should be in that race, and we should be out front. And the world should know that Muslims, we have to change their reputation. And we know that the enemy is Islam, Shaitan, and who is the enemy to all religion and who's the enemy to all people, wants to put a negative message as opposed to, so we have to counter all the time the argument about terrorism and being extremists. So when you have these bad examples, it takes away from the good example. And I think we have to, efforts like that, we don't get much recognition. I found out that even in 9/11 in the World Trade, there were some donations that were sent over in America. That's never publicized in the United States. So, but Allah sees it all, you know, and whatever people miss that He sees, but we have to keep that effort to be out front in service, and then let that be the reputation. When somebody says the Muslim, what is their reputation? Oh, he's compassionate, he's giving, he's helpful. That should be more the reputation, and then this figure that just wants to beat you down and say that we're the best or the strongest.
The emphasis on purification of the soul, the emphasis on brotherhood and sisterhood, on solidarity, on working for common good, all of these are Islamic values that we have to nurture and promote. And alhamdulillah, the Hizmet Movement is doing a good job in that aspect.
It is the true spirit of teamwork that is reflected in the Hizmet Movement, where everybody subscribes to the common objectives, and selflessly people work toward that.